Okay, so guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're keeping well. Now, Mehdi Hasan, as we know, will never fail to take the side of the Muslim argument. He did so in relation to Israel-Palestine, which ultimately cost him his job, and he's doing so again in relation to the grooming gangs in the United Kingdom, which is predominantly British Pakistani men. The statistics don't lie, but he's trying to make an argument and he's trying to digress from the issue and bring white males into this. This is not about white men. This is about British Pakistani men that are doing this at astronomical rates. But he doesn't care. This guy masquerades around like a liberal. He's not a liberal. He's an Islamist that is just masquerading around, and he has the mask on, the liberal mask on. But he's really not. He puts Islam first. And we've seen that, like I just said, in relation to Israel-Palestine, he lost his job to defend the Muslim argument. And again here, you'd think that he'd just say, you know what, we need to speak about this in the Muslim community. There's a lot we need to correct in the Muslim community. But of course, zero accountability is primary when dealing with the Muslim conversation. They never take accountability for anything. Somehow everything is Islamophobia. But then in the Quran, it talks about persecuting everyone who doesn't believe in Allah, and no questions gets asked. So let me get this right. The book is there and it preaches a lot of, let's be honest, it has a lot of hateful rhetoric towards the non-believers. And if you question that, you're Islamophobic. And they just wave that word around all the time. You know, so yeah. But anyway, guys, I'm going to proceed into the segment today, and that's Piers Morgan and Hasan Mehdi Hasan, whatever. And they're going to be talking. I'm not going to play most of the interview, just like 6-ish minutes of the interview. And honestly speaking, looking at the comments, you know, I rightly agree with them. They say that Mehdi Hasan is just absolutely insufferable. You know, you can't bear him. He's too much, man. He's so pro-Islam, it's a joke. And this is why I always tell liberals, like, be careful who's on your team, because trust me, if they ever become the majority in the United Kingdom, the non-believers, you're gonna suffer. And we see this around the world. We see this in Nigeria, we see this in Iraq, we see this in Syria, we see this in Egypt, we see this in even Palestine. The Christian population were being persecuted by the Muslim population. We see this all over the place. It's well and truly game over. And that's just me being honest. You know, you have to look at statistics, and statistics don't lie. You know, so let's get straight into this interview. And yeah, man, whatever Mehdi Hasan's going to say, I'm sure it's just going to be, you know, a pile of nonsense. You know, I've had a quick preview. But anyway, let's go.
Actual specific scandal of predominantly British Pakistani men abusing young white girls. That's the scandal that needs a proper laser-like focus, I think.
Well, okay, and that's fair enough. I think that we can debate about the Pakistani men angle. There's a big debate about the ethnicity factor, as you know. But just one last point.
Not really. The vast majority were British Pakistani.
Can I finish a sentence?
Well, they were.
That's not true.
In
those specific towns, yes, but as a phenomenon in the UK.
What do you mean it's not true?
As a national phenomenon, the Home Office... Can I finish a sentence, Piers, or are we going to get through this interview?
Sure.
Every time I start a sentence, you interrupt me.
Go on.
The Home Office, under a Conservative government in 2020, put out a report, not sure if you've seen it, got a lot of coverage, saying that the majority of men in grooming gangs, which is not a great phrase, are white men under the age of 30. That was the survey data that they found. They said we need more research. It's not a hard and fast result. We don't have enough ethnicity data. Do you know a lot of police forces, Piers, 30, 40, 50% of victims and perpetrators, they just don't register the ethnicity.
How many white men? How many white men?
Gangs.
Okay. How many white
That's
men?
not to say specific gangs in Rotherham and Rochdale and Telford were brown.
Okay. So let's just focus.
But Piers, here's what bothers me. You asked me about Elon Musk.
I'm sorry,
because you cut me off.
Hey, no, I'm allowed to respond to what you just said. Because the reality is, what you're doing is you're massively distorting. Well, you're massively distorting the story, aren't you?
No, you are. I started telling you about Alexis J. You jumped in with your gotcha about Rotherham. Have you read the 20 recommendations of Alexis J's report? Can you tell your views on the 20 recommendations?
Not a gotcha.
How many times is Rotherham mentioned in the report?
Many.
It is. Have you read the 468-page report?
Many. When I went on your show recently, I let you ask me all sorts of questions because it was your show. Okay, I'm asking.
And I let you answer them. You ever let me finish a sentence?
I have. You keep saying things which I want to challenge. You keep saying things I want to challenge.
Yeah, so let me say them, and then you challenge them. So let me just say you a question. I promise, I say them and then you challenge me.
Let me ask you a
I'll
question.
say them really fast, I speak really fast. Let me just say them. Alexis J says no need for a new inquiry because her 20 recommendations,
Yeah, I don't agree with
if
that.
you don't know what they are, haven't been implemented yet.
I know.
That's fine. I do agree with that. David Greenwood, who was this lawyer for the victims in Rotherham. You mentioned Rotherham as a gotcha, I think. David Greenwood, who was the lawyer in Rotherham of the girls, he was, that's my opinion. I have a right to opinion. David Greenwood, the lawyer in Rotherham, of the dozens of girls, he's the guy who represented the girls in Rotherham. He says, I don't think we should have another inquiry, there's too many inquiries. We need action. We need to get the recommendations done. Another inquiry, he says, would be a distraction. Now, that's not a gotcha on my end either. Maybe we should have another action inquiry. I don't feel that strongly about it. I'm just telling you, Piers, for your viewers who are following Elon Musk's nonsense, a man who knows nothing about this stuff, that David Greenwood, a lawyer involved in this, and Alexis J, who did an inquiry in Rotherham, and then did a national inquiry, says we shouldn't have another inquiry.
Yeah, and I'm making the point that in her national inquiry, she mentioned...
You and I are not experts.
I'm making the point in her national inquiry, she mentioned Rotherham once, and there, to me, is the problem. But the other problem...
And in her Rotherham inquiry, she covered it in detail. She also said, don't make a link between Pakistani men and this problem. Because
let me tell you, this
grooming
rape gang scandal and the 50 towns and villages involved in this rape gang scandal, tell me this, you've just tried to suggest that more white men were doing it than British Pakistani men. Bit of a surprise, I think, to everyone you've just named.
That's the Home Office report.
Done the report. Okay, so how many white men involved in this rape gang scandal?
That's the Home Office research, Piers. Facts don't care about your feelings.
Hang on. How many white men have been taken to court, charged and or convicted of raping these white girls in these 50 towns and villages? Just for the record.
Okay. All right, I don't have the full numbers, but let me give you some examples. In 2023 in Glasgow,
what
there were
percentage?
7 years of child sex crimes prosecuted. Piers, we don't have the percentages. That's the whole point.
We know that the very vast majority are actually British Pakistanis.
So hold on.
You're trying to deflect it into thinking it's somehow white men doing all this.
Oh my God. So in Glasgow, there were white men, 11 people abused 3 children, one of them in a nappy diaper.
I'm not talking about Glasgow.
You're not talking about that, nor is Elon Musk. In the West Midlands, a decade of child sex crimes, 21 white people abused 7 children, all of them under the age of 12.
Right.
In Cornwall, in 2010,
these
3
aren't
years
the
of sex
scandals
crimes.
we're talking about,
when I talk about sex crime. 6 men. Well, I'll get to that in a moment. 6 men abused 30 girls, the youngest of whom was 5 years old. And you've just made my point for me. These are the scandals we're not talking about. Why? Why are we defining child sex crimes and grooming gangs by race, unless you're a racist or trying to make political payout? I care about the victims of all crimes. I don't give a damn whether the perpetrator was brown, black, white, blue, or yellow. I think we should support the victims of those crimes, and if you're only obsessed with the perpetrators, as Elon Musk is, as Robert Jenner is, then you don't actually care about these girls. That's what Alexis J said.
But the argument, as you know, for those who do want a big further inquiry, is that actually there was a very specific section of the community, a very specific section of the Muslim community, and it was British Pakistani men who they believe were operating under some warped cultural thing, which they felt entitled them to behave that way.
That's not proven, right? That's what we need. That's what we need. Obviously, more studying on, more research, and I agree with that because these guys in places like Rochdale, Rotherham, were British Pakistani men overwhelmingly in those cases.
Yes.
But it's very interesting that you pick a sample and then say these are the towns we're talking about. They're all brown. Well, why can't we talk about Cornwall or Glasgow or the West Midlands? I'm saying this is a phenomenon that happens nationwide. There are multiple peers, surely you'd accept, there are multiple factors. There are experts on child sex abuse who you should invite on the show, I'm not one, who will tell you there are multiple factors that cause this stuff. I mean, this happens in every country in the world. In these towns, clearly there were a lot of things going on. We know about police corruption. We should be talking about police corruption. In places like Rotherham, where the police knew what was going on, and there are and there are allegations of like money and drugs going between the perpetrators and the police. These girls were treated badly, not just because they were white. Not just because they were white peers, let's talk about the class issue. Because they were seen as worthless, they were seen as poor, working class, not having any value or credibility. So there's a lot of things to talk about here. And yes, we can talk about culture, but you know what? It's interesting you bring religion. Religion is the most absurd thing of all. Do you think Islam sanctions any of this? These people are applying girls with alcohol and drugs. Last time I checked, alcohol is forbidden in Islam. Even an ignorant person knows that. So any idea that this has anything to do with religion is absolutely absurd and laughable. And again, we don't define white people crimes by Christianity or Judaism. We don't talk about Hindu bankers or Jewish carjackers. I'm not sure why we're bringing religion into this. It's absolutely absurd. And last point on the victims, Piers, I just want to say this, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this point. The victims were overwhelmingly white, right? But they weren't only white. There's this new thing going on that these brown men decided to target white girls seen as outside the community and fair game. Not true. If you read Alexis Jay's report on Rotherham, then you'll see she points out that there were a lot of young Asian girls who were also abused by these men, but who didn't come forward because of quote-unquote the shame in their community, their parents saying they'll never get married. So there are actually a lot going on here that we've just glossed over. And Elon Musk coming in with his disinformation, his racism, his Islamophobia, championing Tommy Robinson. Surely you would condemn the championing of Islam.
Guys, just very quick. Mehdi Hasan, I'm sorry, I've just listened. I'll try to let it just play through. This is a very dangerous man. Like, look at what he's spewing here. He cannot hold the British Pakistani community accountable. He cannot do that. He just can't do that. And this is the problem that a lot of people are having when it comes to, Islam. There's always a problem with someone. In India, the Muslim community have warred with the Hindus, with the Christians. They're at war currently with the Jews, with the atheists. There is, with themselves, Sunni, Shia, they will war with anyone. This is what I'm saying. So there's clearly a problem here as it relates to religion. Like, we need to call it for what it is. I know people that are politically correct in Parliament don't want to say it, but it's the truth. When statistics show that there's always a problem, then you need to look at that. What is it with the religion that is causing so much havoc? No matter anywhere it settles with, even when it settles with themselves, Sunni Shias. Most victims, most people that lose their life over Muslim extremism are Muslim people. This is the most people that lose their life. So it's clearly a problem within that community, and it's a problem when it tries to integrate with any other community, because there always seems to be a clash all the time. Look inside and ask questions. Stop pointing the finger all the time. This man is dangerous to society, Mehdi Hasan, and this interview is so disgusting. I thought he would actually come on here and say, you know what, we need to talk in the Muslim community and actually have some self-accountability. And this guy is just diverted to every other topic other than keeping the focus on what the topic should be about, and that's British Pakistani men in record numbers, doing this and carrying out these acts, these sick acts. So yeah. Anyway.
Islamophobic, violent bigot like Robinson, and lying that he's in prison because he uncovered this. Robinson had nothing to do with this.
I literally have been doing that.
You know, Piers, good. And Piers, that Tommy Robinson almost jeopardized a trial against a bunch of brown guys in Huddersfield with his contempt of court antics.
Twice, he nearly wrecked 2 trials.
He's not a champion of the victims of gangs.
No, he's not. What do you say? I'm genuinely curious what you think of this. I said on X yesterday that Tommy Robinson is, to me, he's the embodiment of an Islamophobe. He's Islamophobic. And there's plenty of examples of where his rhetoric, I think, stacks it up. To which a lot of people, including Gad Sages coming after you, say there's no such thing as Islamophobia. That's the argument that they come up with, which is there is no such thing as Islamophobia, that you're allowed to be as critical as you want of Islam without being accused of being an Islamophobe. What do you say to that?
Guys, that's the end of the video. I don't want to hear Mehdi Hasan talk. Well, to be fair, the segment was done. And I know Mehdi Hasan's just going to talk about it. It happens in every religion. This shouldn't just be a Muslim thing, but, statistics show that everywhere the religion goes, there's problems. But he will never look into this. He will absolutely defend this, till the day he leaves this planet. So yeah. And just last thing, when I talk about Islamophobia, you need to be specific when you're talking about this, because there is a Quran that speaks about persecution, speaks about jizya. Once you conquer their lands, you charge them. They must pay you. It happened in Egypt. Many people had to flee. Many Egyptians had to flee because the Muslim community was persecuting them and was charging them, extorting them jizya. money to, you know, maintain their faith, and then it got unbearable and they just had to leave eventually, because it was like, listen, you're going to keep paying this, we're going to keep applying pressure to you until you accept Islam. So when in the book it has all of this rhetoric in it and you question how does that now become Islamophobia, I just want to understand this, because you know, the truth is, you know, Europeans, they think they understand this, they don't understand this. Africa understand this. The Middle East understand this. When I mean the Middle East, I'm talking countries like Saudi Arabia, for example. This is why they don't allow just any, you know, any asylum seeker from any Muslim nation to come into their country. They're like, whoa, that's not happening. You understand? The UAE understand this because they understand what they're up against. You know, but Europe, they just don't get it. They want to be politically correct. And it's like the foreign minister said. There's a foreign minister. Actually, I'm going to play the video for you right now.
And let me say this in English so you can understand what I'm saying.
I have translation.
No, I know you have translation, but I just want to make sure you get it right. There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of the lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
And I guess I'll leave it as that, you know. Who knows more than he does when it comes to, you know, Islam, you know, and he's just said it there. And, you know, Europe aren't taking any kind of precaution. You know, they're just, you know, trying to not get called racist, and they're just pandering all the time. And eventually it will cost, you know, Europe. And this is just what I think